I come from Luanda, and we have a big problem with Bhang. I can assure you. I know a lot of our children, my own brothers, I know some of them, use this. And it disturbs me. I'm disturbed. But I would not want them to go to prison simply because they have taken a stick of Bhang or something.
Yeah. Narcotics control bill. Was it passed too quickly? Is it going to be signed by the... Should it be sent back to the House for debate? How are we treating people who are under the influence of drugs? Well, here in studio, live to speak about these issues, Chris Omulele is the MP for Luanda. He's one of the ones who did not help pass the bill. He was against the bill. And we also have Teddy Odunda. He's an advocate of the High Court. Gentlemen, welcome to Hot 96.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good to see you both. Mheshimiwa, first of all, you were not part of the debate, or you were against the debate to pass this bill.
Correct, Jeff.
Why?
Jeff, for the longest time in this country, I think we have looked at users of drugs as criminals. And I think this narrative must change, because users of drugs really are victims of traffickers of drugs. And for me, therein lies the biggest distinction that we must make when we are discussing drugs in this country. The trafficker and the user. The person who sells drugs, that must be the person we must aim our law at to punish. But the person who uses drugs really needs our intervention as a health with health interventions to help rehabilitate that person, to get him off those drugs. So when we take this person and we punish him and we jail him for 10 years or more, I don't think we are helping ourselves or this country by doing that.
And yet for the longest time, Mheshimiwa, that's what we did. I mean, how many drug traffickers do you know who've been arrested?
Thousands, Jeff. And I know thousands of people who use this. In Kenya, the commonest drug really is marijuana. And if you ask me, I would tell you I know thousands, literally, who would be in jail today. So if we were to punish everybody who has ever used marijuana in this country, Jeff would have to have a quarter of this country, or maybe even half, as a prison.
Teddy Odunga, you're laughing because I'm sure you've seen this in the corridors of the law courts. I mean, by the way, if one is arrested with a joint, joint of marijuana, what's the sentence?
10 years.
It's 10 years, Jeff.
10 years?
Yes.
One joint, unfortunately, it's 10 years.
10 years, Jeff. And you see, the problem with the law prescribes minimum sentences, so that the magistrates who mete out these sentences, their hands are tied. They are supposed to mete out the minimum. So the law does not give them wiggle room for them to look at a person and mitigate. So if you have one roll of Bhang today, Jeff, and somebody has 1 ton of Bhang or heroin or something else, both of you are facing a minimum of 10 years.
And Teddy, for the longest time, the user is the one who gets the brunt of this.
Unfortunately, yes, because the trafficker has money to bribe his way through the system. The user cannot afford legal representation. The user will end up pleading guilty when charged in court. So our prisons are actually full of the low-level users rather than the traffickers. If indeed the war on drugs was really to deal with the traffickers, weren't law enforcement aiming all their efforts towards traffickers and rather aiming at the users, who are easily found in drug dens and these simple joints, but they're never actually going for the traffickers, the main traffickers who are well known.
And the reason is?
Money. Poor people are the ones who end up starting to sell drugs to survive. The poor people are the ones who use these drugs to cope with different issues in life, such as poverty. So they're the ones who are usually targeted. They're the ones who cannot bribe the police officers when they come. Right? So they're the ones who are always and end up bearing the brunt of the human rights violations as a result of these laws.
Mheshimiwa, you think we got our priorities wrong sometimes when you look at some of our laws?
We always do, Jeff. And in this country, the things that we do sometimes surprise me. When you look at, even today, we are having a pandemic on our hands. And the things that we are doing with our money, we are today passing a budget of 3 trillion plus. And we have only vaccinated about 1 million Kenyans. The first dose, that's only the first dose. Those who have been vaccinated fully with the second dose are only about 100,000. And we are not talking about this, about the vaccination of Kenyans. And this is a life-threatening thing. And it's the same approach that we have had with drugs, really, in this country. We have criminalized the young man, the young child, who, under influence of others in school, goes and takes a little bangi. And if we catch that child, we are going to jail him for 10 years. Yet the person who sits and crafts a plan to procure these drugs and supply them to these children manages to escape. How many traffickers do we have in prison today, Jeff? I can assure you, very few. Very few. Because these people can afford the best legal counsel in this country. They will go for the cliff on betters of this world, and they will compromise the case right from the police station all the way to the courts. I'm not advocating for people to use drugs, by the way. All I'm saying is the policy makers, at the policy end, we must recognize that the people who use drugs need help rather than to jail them, to punish them. They need to be told this is the right, they need to be cancelled first. And then they need treatment, to be treated as a health issue rather than as criminals.
Teddy, if the president signs this bill into law, then what?
So basically, it won't be the end of all this. What we'll need to now build the capacities of communities on this law and how this law will affect them, so that they avoid putting themselves in situations where they can easily get arrested, right? Then we'll continue working with parliamentarians, because we were with them in this process when we're trying to advocate and convince them not to pass this bill. So we need to sit down with them so that they can take us through how we should go about it, the proper way to go about it, to deal with contentious bills. Because this will not be the last contentious bill we're going to deal with. Others are going to come. So we need to work with parliamentarians so that as civil society organizations and as lawyers and advocates of drug policy reform, how do we work with parliamentarians to ensure good policies are passed?
Why do you think it passed in the first place?
I can tell you, Jeff, that the child who uses bangi needs help rather than being taken to prison. The money we spend on prison, keeping these children in prison, why can't we spend it on rehabilitation centers in the counties? Why can't we just do a rehabilitation center in each county? I come from Luanda, and we have a big problem with bangi. I can assure you. I know a lot of our children, my own brothers, I know some of them, use this. And it disturbs me. I'm disturbed. But I would not want them to go to prison simply because they have taken a stick of bangi or something.
Yeah. That's shocking.
It is shocking.
Why? I mean, when we were growing up, this problem wasn't as evident. Why is it? Is it the availability? Is it the cheap? Is it for affordability?
I think times are changing. More research is being done about drugs. These young guys now are doing more research about drugs. So it's no longer about the general stigma where my dad used to tell me, Ted, ukivuta bangi utakuwa mwendo wazimu. So curiosity, they're reading more about drugs and even researching on where to get it, and they're getting it. So it's an issue of availability, improve technology, so people can get information on what they want and what they need to do.
Jeff, social media is the biggest culprit here. The information on social media and these gadgets in the hands of our children, this is where this information is flying. And the different concoctions that these children can get these drugs in, and the effects, the highness, and we have hyped up being high in this country as a good thing. And the children want to be high also. So this is the problem that we have. So everybody wants to be hyper in this country. And it's dangerous.
As an advocate, Teddy, I mean, this must be very frustrating for you.
It is. It is really frustrating, because on one end we're trying to deal with the issue of drugs, but who's the person who's being constantly incarcerated is the poor man. Even as an advocate, if I want to make money, this poor man is not paying me enough money to represent him in court. So I'll shy away from representing him in court. So the law is criminalizing the poor. Let's just put it plain and simple. The law as it is criminalizes the poor. The rich kid can smoke his joint in the house in peace. He's going to send a delivery guy who's going to bring in his drugs in the house. Parties, these concerts we have, guys smoke joints.
It's crazy.
And cops are there. No one is arrested,
Crazy.
nothing happens.
It's crazy.
But the poor boy in Kibera, arrested with a joint, will go to prison for 10 years. The poor heroin user in Magodoroni in Mombasa, who's taking his drugs and has fallen asleep is going to be arrested, right? But not the rich. Not the rich. So the law is basically criminalizing them.
Question I want to ask you is, if it was legalized,
Yes.
can you imagine if it was legalized and people could, grow it freely in Luanda?
I
Wouldn't
can assure you, Luanda will become the new capital of this country. I can assure you.
You can assure me.
Yes, I can assure you. I have seen Bhang. I know the people who use Bhang in Luanda. They are not mad people. They are not criminals. They don't. Some of them, of course, overuse and they become just like alcohol, anything else. They become a nuisance to society. But if we were to properly, systematically legalize the use and the production of marijuana in this country in a properly structured way, I can assure you it's a gold mine.
Teddy, going forward, best case scenario, worst case scenario with this bill?
Going forward, so currently I'm coordinating an initiative that brings together civil society organizations and individuals who advocate for drug policy reform. So moving forward, best case scenario, the president does not sign the bill. We'll be hoping Parliament will be ready to welcome us so that we can have good discussions and bring in community members to give in their views on the bill and how to move forward with the amendment of the same. Worst case scenario, if the bill is passed, if the president signs the law, as I said, we'll just need to build the capacities of our community members so they're able to understand the dangers of this law, the dangers they're going to face as a result of this law. Work with MPs on how to pass more contentious bills, so that as Mheshimiwa said, after 6 months we can try and amend this bill again. So work with MPs on that. And yeah.
Mheshimiwa, will we ever get rid of this drug menace? Will we ever?
No, Jeff, you know that history is replete. So drugs will always be there, but it is the management of that menace that distinguishes a society that wants to go forward from one that wants to kill itself. And I think with this bill, seriously, I ask my president, kindly do not sign this law. This law is going to kill a whole generation of Kenyans if it is properly implemented. And my message really is, why I'm asking this, let the president consider the distinction between the person who traffics and the person who uses. The person who traffics is the criminal, but the person who uses is the victim of this, and he needs the president's help to get away from this habit.